Thank you, Brian. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's school board meeting. It's March 1st. Would you all please join me for pledge allegiance? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda, we have public participation. I see we have somebody in the audience, so I'd like to come up and let us know what's on your mind.
Podium?
Yep.
I'll sit with my back to you. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to visit with you folks tonight. My name is Mary Barron. I live on the Ridge Road, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Friends of Farmington. In 2016, a small group of Farmington residents banded together to form Friends of Farmington. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. I was fortunate enough, I feel, to be asked to be one of the founding members of this group. Over the course of the past few years, we've been very active in the community, and through the generosity of our supporters, our fundraisers, and our benefactors, we've been able to set forth a scholarship program. Having had 25 years of experience myself in associating with Dollars for Scholars both here in Farmington and on the national level, I was chosen by our board to be the chairman of the scholarship committee, and that's what brings me here tonight. I am pleased to offer this year's scholarship application to this board for the distribution through your guidance office, please. The Friends of Farmington has committed up to $5,000 in funding for the winning applicants who have chosen to pursue 2 or 4 year schools, post-high school education in any of the following trades: engineering, manufacturing studies, technology, medical, and if you think something else fits a category, give us a shout. Scholarships will be announced at graduation and will be awarded upon successful completion of the student's first semester at his chosen place of study. We encourage all seniors who qualify for our scholarships to complete the applications within the guidelines as indicated in our cover letter. And I personally thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. May I approach?
Go ahead.
I've made 5 copies.
Okay.
Get that to your guidance group. And best of luck to everybody that applies.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
So, not having anybody else in public here, Jen, do we have anybody that would like to speak?
Not yet. If anyone would like to speak, you can unmute your mic at this time. You can also indicate in the chat for me, and I will let the chair know. Is there anyone that would like to speak at this time? Please unmute, indicate your name and your street address.
Okay, thank you, Jen. We'll move on. We do have public participation later on in our meeting if somebody has some comments or thoughts for the board. Before we get to our report, Ruth Ellen wanted us to discuss
The basketball
the
tournament.
basketball tournaments. Go ahead.
So we had some discussion early on. I don't know if Eric is on yet. Is Eric in?
Yes, he is.
Okay. We had some discussion about the regular season, and then it was going to be in tournament as it comes up. The tournament is upon us. I would like a board vote as far as formally participating in the tournament. And then also we need to talk about where some of those games may fall. There is a possibility that the girls' team may end up with a home game on a Sunday, which we haven't had Sunday games, so that would be another board vote to make sure that that could happen. In the event that we do not do that vote for a Sunday game, it could potentially go to the other team, so it doesn't mean that they wouldn't be able to participate in the tournament. It would mean that it wouldn't be a home. Right now, the way the tournament is set up, it is a random seeding, so they're not seeded by any type of score throughout the season. It's random draw. So I believe the girls are seeded number 2, the boys are seeded number 5.
Now, when we did discuss this before, we had some concerns regarding the precautions.
Yes.
And what are the current precautions that are being applied to these tournaments?
Right now for the tournaments, all must be masked, including the players, including while they are playing. It's home rule as far as the first 2 rounds of the tournament. So if a particular school says we're not allowing fans, or we're only allowing 2 fans for home, we're not allowing any away fans, it's whatever the home rules are. Once you get into the next 2 rounds, they are asking that the home venue allow 2 visitors per athlete, both home and away. If the home venue cannot do that, they will check and see if the other team can. They'll go with the one with the more lax in that regard. If that doesn't work, then they will kind of negotiate back and forth and see whose restrictions allow the most fans without being no fans. So that would be the one issue that is different from where we are now. Up until the first 2 rounds, it is regional play. These are schools that we've already played so far. And then the last 2 rounds of the tournament are the winners of those regionals, and those will end up being, from other places of the state.
And that first game of the tournament is tonight at 7.
Correct.
So discussion or concerns from the board members?
I got a question. Say masks are required?
Masks are required for the
And
tournament.
that
yes.
includes staff?
That includes staff.
Okay, so,
It's my understanding.
okay. I'm tired of my phone ringing with pictures of staff without masks. It's been brought up before at the meeting. I'm not going to punish the kids who are wearing the mask while they're playing, but I think it's a problem. And I'll leave it at that.
Anyone else for discussion? My discussion is I'm in support of this because it's what we've indicated. I think to be consistent, the precautions are a little bit more than what we initially started with. So I think it's a happy medium to allow the kids to participate in the tournament. Any other discussion? I'll make a motion to allow our teams to participate in the tournament.
Second.
Any other discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. 4-0.
And does that include Sunday game if need be?
That wasn't part of my motion, and we
Okay,
can discuss
that's
that
why
now.
if
Because I
that's a
think that's
separate-
really
yeah.
got more to do with us, our ability to provide the space and clean it
Right.
in a timely manner for a school Monday.
And that was a conversation that Mr. Larkham and I had with Mr. Gordon. Do you want to take a mic? You can take this one and I'll step back here. Or you can,
I mean, this would be a one-time occurrence at this point.
Yes, we discussed it this morning. I've already talked with a couple of my staff here who have said that they'd be willing to come in Sunday before the game is over to make sure that everything is cleaned up afterwards, disinfected and cleaned,
Good.
if they make it to the Sunday, if the Sunday game is here.
so it would be the possibility of the girls having a Sunday game this coming Sunday, and then the following week, which is the last round, there will be a Saturday and a Sunday game. If both teams made it, the guys would be on Saturday, the girls would be on Sunday.
So worst case, we'd have to clean it 2 Sundays.
2 Sundays and a Saturday. So we'd have to do, potentially if they both made it to that last round and we were the home team, then it would be Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
I'll make a motion to allow the superintendent or her designee to schedule Sunday games if needed.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing, and all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Larry.
That was seconded by Mr. Whitehouse?
Yes.
Thank you.
Was that the coach that was here? That just said thank you?
That was girls' coach?
That was Don Weeks.
Don Weeks.
Okay.
Snuck in to hear what was going on. Next, we have reports. First, we have student services.
Where would you like me to present from?
Wherever you'd like.
All right, I'll just grab a chair up here.
But you're gonna need a microphone, so you can grab that.
I can come right here. All right. Thank you. Good evening. This report in general goes over a law that, discipline laws that go into effect July 1st. So I've outlined for you kind of the impact in terms of what it means for New Hampshire schools. So we can continue to assign short-term suspensions up to 10 days. So that can be cumulative or that can be all in one fell swoop. If you have a student that does something that, is really dangerous for the health, welfare, or safety of students and the school personnel. Those don't have to be repeated offenses. So for instance, say for instance during COVID-19 a student spit at another student. That could be dangerous to the health welfare of an individual. So therefore, it might be, in that scenario, justified to give a student 5-10 days of out-of-school suspension. However, in consideration of those things that are not an obvious threat to health or safety or welfare, we have to try, before we go to out-of-school suspension, graduated sanctions. What that means, and I kind of give you a list on the margin there. That could mean any number of things, and we as a district need to determine what those things will be. That could be a parent conference. That could be, parents come in for a meeting. It could be peer mediation. It could be instruction and actually probably should be instruction in what the violation was and why that's a violation of student code. Could be detention, could be in-school suspension, it could be any number of things. But that is required prior to initiating an out-of-school suspension. Yes?
The first 10 days or the second 10?
The first 10. So if you do something that's really awful, like the example I gave,
Right.
we can, don't pass go, we can put you out for an extended period of time, whatever that may be, up to 10 days. If it is something that is not as egregious, you're cutting classes, you've done it repeatedly, and we've had the parent meeting, and we've had the parent phone call, and we've done a number of these other things, probably up through and including in-school suspension, then you might suspend a student. However, then we get into the ethical conversation of does it make sense to suspend a student who's skipping a class. Nevertheless, that's just the example. So up to that point, that's what we call short-term suspensions, up to 10 cumulative days. And then I list in there too kind of the requirements in terms of what we need to do in terms of giving a student due process when we choose to suspend them. And so that's the next portion of that. We can, after that the short-term suspensions of 10 days, then initiate an additional 10 days, should that be required. And that's usually the superintendent who is the designee of the board who is permitted to do that. So that can be the additional 10 days. For acts that constitute an act of theft, destruction, or violence. So they've eliminated the gross misconduct that used to be part of that additional 10 days. Whether or not that's going to make a difference in how we implement those additional 10 days from the superintendent remains to be seen. Basically what New Hampshire is attempting to do, and this lines up with a lot of other states, is attempting to limit the amount of time that we can suspend students, which it makes sense, right? I mean, we want students in school, we want to be educating them. However, in order to do so, we need to have this list of sanctions that we're going to use, consequences, for lack of a better word. In addition, so once we get to the point where a student has had 10 days out of school suspension for whatever offense, we need to create an intervention plan So we've always had something like that in place for special education students. It's called a manifestation determination meeting to decide whether or not the student's disability is contributing to the behavior infractions. Now, any student, general ed, special ed, 504, doesn't matter, we have to create a plan to address the problematic behaviors. That's obviously going to be a conversation with staff and also with our building administrators to talk about what is that plan going to look like? What is that plan going to include for services? Well, it might include, and we do a lot of this already, so it's a manner of formalizing those things that we've been doing for a considerable period of time already. However, we have to keep the documentation in line for that, and that's going to be kind of be my project to kind of develop what are going to be those pieces of record keeping that we're going to use and the process we're going to use to be able to document we've been doing all of this.
Particularly since a lot of it's already in place for special ed.
Correct, yeah.
So are you going to be proposing a document or a policy for us to approve as far as what
Yes.
those mediation steps will be and in what order?
Yeah, so we have a policy that Drummond Woodson has put together. So part of the training that I went to, they gave us the policy. So Ruth Ellen, when the time feels right, she will bring that forward to you. We do have it. In addition to this, and I think it's on my next page, we need to have with that a code of conduct. So obviously each school building has its own code of conduct. Part of that code of conduct needs to be reference the graduated sanctions or consequences that we're going to give students for the different behavioral infractions, so that it's no longer, I mean, obviously there are always extenuating circumstances. I mean, you know, mutual combat is one thing, but when there are different stories that go along in terms of, you know, well, he did this to me and this happened way back when, you know, sometimes that figures into a conversation. So that will be part of what we need to address in the code of conduct. Given extenuating circumstances, here is the range or the expected consequence that a student could receive for whatever the infraction might be.
Yeah, I think what you just said ties into something that Tim said a while ago regarding our policies for each school, that talked about bringing them all together, one policy, which would be helpful in applying this, because it would go through in one uniform policy for all 3 schools with this information.
But there also needs to be some age-appropriate gradation
Right.
of where that goes as well. So it may be, here's the Valley View section,
Right.
here's the high school section.
Yeah, yeah. And however the district decides that it wants to approach that, you know, it was mentioned in the training that that's one way districts could look at it. Districts could look at it as, here's the code of conduct for our district, here's the, you know, kind of the column for the age of the child, here are the possible consequences that go along with it. It could look like a rubric, it could look like any number of things. And certainly that's, you know, a conversation we need to have before July 1st.
I mean, and if we had one uniform policy, even with those age-appropriate items, parents would be given the same document, so when their kids would graduating to the next school, they would have already seen that information.
Yep.
Saying, okay, now this is a little different at this school regarding some of these things they need to consider, but it's still, they've basically already seen it before.
Yep, absolutely. You can still expel a student, but at this point, the longest possible suspension for a student is now 20 days. So nothing beyond 20 days.
It used to be 10 at the building level, I could add 10, and then the board could do an additional. Now it's 20 is the max. And so at that point, it's either, that's for that single infraction. But it's also a cumulative 20.
It can be a cumulative 20. And after 20, then you should be visiting the school board to have a discussion of whether or not expulsion is on the table. There are scenarios that they presented in the workshop where you could come to the school board, and the school board may say, no, we're not going to expel you. And then you go back, the child is returned to the school, and then the timeline kind of starts all over again in terms of, you know, starting at 0 for how the infractions move forward. We would be hard pressed to say we're getting to the point of an expulsion and we haven't done some things regarding child find regarding a 504 plan or an IEP plan, and an examination of whether or not the public school setting is the best setting for this student. So I do preface that. So that's,
And an expulsion is only up to the end of the school year. So
Right.
they're going to affect that as well.
and for special education students, we are still required to provide services, even if they are expelled. So just to state that. Questions about that? I know that's a lot of new information. I'll be working to give you more information as time goes on and as we get closer to July.
I got a question of the chair. Does it make sense to put this on for an action item for the 29th of this month? We've got an election coming up. Stan's currently a policy, part of our policy committee, so we're going to see a change in policy committee potentially. And that's at the end of March, April, May. So that gives us 2 months to come up with a really good concrete policy regarding discipline. And I think it's a priority. I think that's an area where what the law is requiring is what we actually should be doing, or should have been doing.
Yeah, is that something, as timetable that we could achieve?
I think certainly to bring the policy forward, and you've got policy, and then you've got the code of conduct, which really becomes the procedure.
Right.
And so
That would have to fall
you
later.
could certainly approve the policy, and then the -R part of that, that's the procedure, can be, as Tim said, worked on over the next month or so to make sure that we get that piece if that's what you're looking to do. But you'd be reorganizing the board on the 15th, and as far as who's on what committee. And so then if you bring it forward the following month, the following week, then it will do after that, you would at least have some time.
The 29th is the second meeting after our reorganization.
Weekly, yes.
I mean, that's my recommendation, to forward it to the policy committee on the 29th.
Oh, at the 29th.
At the 29th meeting,
Right.
whoever's the policy committee, obviously Diana should be an integral part of coordinating with that policy committee, and, let's get it out in writing and ham it out before the July 1 deadline.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense, yeah.
And the policy that they've offered is a good starting point.
Yeah.
I think the big work we're going to have to do is on the code of conduct.
Yeah.
So any
Okay.
other questions on that? Okay?
There's a lot to absorb. Go ahead.
Yes, it is. So on the second page, I just kind of, reiterate the issue regarding requiring a code of conduct. I have the caseload numbers for you in the margin. Senate Bill 130, I just kind of give you a brief update on what that bill is. It's, I brought it to you, I think, at my last school
Yep.
board meeting, which was the House Bill 20. Senate Bill 130 is the new proposal. Yeah, it's a Senate version of the House bill. And so I do down below give you the details again regarding House Bill 20, because it's pretty much kind of the same platform.
Right.
And it's looking to give, basically it's educational vouchers, and give families, between $3,700 and $8,400 per student.
Now,
to use it.
where do these bills currently stand as far as, has HB 20 been solidified as far as all the language? or-
So,
P20 is past the House.
So last I heard, it was voted 20 to 0 to retain House Bill 20. So at this point, it's lying quietly.
It's dead till 2022.
Yeah, which it certainly could be resurrected, and this, I think, is the means by which it's been resurrected, is through Senate
SB
Bill
130.
130. Yeah.
And that's currently in discussion?
It is, they actually have a public hearing coming up March 2nd.
Tomorrow.
Yep. And there is a way to register your vote, should you wish to do so. I don't have this in this
Vote or
particular form.
opinion?
Well, your opinion, my apologies, your opinion, yep, as to whether or not you're in favor.
And I do have that information if you need me to forward that. Please send us the White House probably has that as well.
And What is your thoughts? You feel that this is likely to pass? Or
I don't know. I mean, it has a lot, I mean, clearly it could be used by people who are doing homeschool. It could be used by individuals who want to send their children to private schools where they might be able to take this, money in this Freedom account and use it toward a private school. However, one of the things that was noted in House Bill 20 was that it does not have to be a New Hampshire school. It could certainly be a school in Maine, it could be, Massachusetts, really anywhere. That's, I think, something that's become problematic for some people who are looking at this particular bill. And then also, the issues related to equity in terms of how to it doesn't have any kind of guardrails for managing students with disabilities. So that I think is in terms of what I've heard about issues related to this bill, these are the pieces I've heard. Certainly, though, there's a lot of reasons to like it. There's a lot of reasons to also wonder where the funding comes from. Considering, public schools are, in New Hampshire, because we are, property-based, really, in terms of how we fund schools. There aren't a lot of other ways to gain revenue. So, for instance, in New York State, where I'm from, we have sales tax. So that also contributed to the support of public schools. Whereas in New Hampshire, that's something we're very proud not to have. And it certainly does drive our economy in terms of people visiting the state. So, something that, a lot of questions, and hopefully during the hearing, a lot of those questions will be answered.
Yeah, I think it's, I know some people feel that it's maybe a negative, but I think parents should have a choice in how that shakes out as far as equity and the value to consider other forms of education for your children. I don't know how it's going to work, but I think I'm for it. But it may take a few attempts to get it sorted out to where it's equitable on both sides.
I'm not. You and I would disagree on that one. I have some grave concerns regarding how we fund that, especially considering, we're still having discussions about, equitable funding of education in New Hampshire itself in the public schools. So I guess I wonder how those two things get balanced out. And maybe during the hearing, we'll hear some answers to that.
I mean, because you have people now that if you want to put your child in private school, you're paying all your taxes, which are going to public education, and then you have to pay 100% of that burden.
You're absolutely right.
And as a parent, I've been there.
Yep.
So you're like, okay, if there's some type of ability to take some of that funding that I've put forth through my own taxation to my child's education, I think that would be reasonable.
Yep.
But
And Mr. Brown brought up last time the issue with the constitutionality of monies going to sectarian schools. That's still...
Well, you also can't take government money to support private schools regardless of...
sectarian or not.
Yeah, if it's a private institution, then you're using government funding, just like we can't use government funding to plow private roads. So that's a hurdle that they're going to have to, I think, get over, or it's a challenge later down the line.
So we'll see, I guess, how that...
Kind of worry about it when they pass or don't pass the law.
Exactly. Any other questions? So that was my report. Okay, thank you.
okay, thank you, Diana. Next, do we have Misty on, or?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Misty.
Okay. Am I good?
Yep.
You're good.
All right, perfect. Mine's short and sweet tonight. I just wanted to give you a heads up on some things we're doing for the remainder of the year in terms of curriculum and instruction. So we've made our focus between now and June to really look at instructional goals and assessment practices. It's classroom assessment practices especially. That's really where our best data is going to come from in terms of student learning at this point. So we really want to make sure our teachers have a common language and we're really supporting them in that. So, and I have actually started this week with in the professional learning communities at the high school. I had my first meeting with some of the teachers today, so that went well. And I also put in my report just to give you sort of an overview of the PD day in February that overall went pretty well. And each school, came up with some of their most important priorities for for now until the remainder of the year. And I put a link in the board report so you could kind of see the landing page and all the raw data that came out of that, as well as the final decisions, if you're interested. So if you click on that link, you can see all of that documentation. I also, as we're doing this work, have made some recommendations for teachers, and I put that in my report as well, just in terms of what to focus in on that gets highest impact in the different areas and wheelhouses within learning. And so that's there. And I also attached the chart that I was discussing around the complex reasoning processes, just so you had that as a reference. The ones that I'm making recommendations to were really the ones that the standards actually focus on significantly. So I'm making those recommendations as we are going to be taking the SAS in this spring. And so trying to help teachers to navigate where their energy should go to get the biggest bang. So that's in there for you. I also just wanted to mention that, just to celebrate some of our teachers who have been started this past month and into March with the learning progressions through the Collaborative for Customized Learning. I'm getting a lot of feedback from the teachers who have done that, saying that they're having a really good experience, and they're learning a lot about learning progressions, which is going to be a real benefit for our district. And I also put in there again a link to my curriculum website. I just wanted to kind of resurrect that again from the fall when I shared it out. There's a lot of information in there that I think could be helpful to you in different topics as you make decisions as a board. So I wanted to give you that link again. And the other thing I wanted to offer to you, I created a huge Google Classroom for the teachers. It's for them to have, a way to have some personalized PD throughout this year, especially with this pandemic. So if you're interested in getting into that, just let me or Ruth Ellen know, and I can actually put any of you board members into that classroom so you can check that out as well. There's a lot of things in there that might be helpful, but you can also get a picture of some of the PD that teachers are having the ability to access. So again, it's just our focus at this point is really looking at how do we collect evidence around learning and get hyper-focused on the things that are going to have the highest impact. So that's my board report for this month, if you have any questions.
Now, on the last section, Misty, you have this chart.
Yes.
Talks about the 19 cognitive reasoning process learners need to master and the standards across. Now, this is for the teachers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And it's just, this chart lays out the different reasoning processes expected for learners. And I've recommended to them to focus on the ones that the standards are really focused in on, especially in what the standards are asking and what kinds of questions will be on our state assessment. And so that's why I made those certain recommendations for teachers to focus their instruction around those, so kids get some good experience with them.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, any questions?
Good, thank you.
So, Misty, you talked about 3 links, and I'm looking through the document, and when I read it, I didn't go to those links. I see 2.
There's 2 links. I'm sorry if I said 3. There's 2 links.
Oh, there's 2 links. Okay.
I did mention a Google Classroom, though, which isn't a link. I actually have to add you in by name.
No.
So if you're interested and wanted to get into that, just let me know or Ruth Ellen know, and I'll add you to the classroom so that you can access it.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I think you referred to a link in there 3 different times. So one of them must have been the same link you were referring to twice. I think it was regarding the professional learning day outcomes.
Yep. And then there's another link in there to my curriculum website.
Right, okay. Yeah, I see both of those. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Moving back to the agenda. Next we have financials.
Yep. I don't know where you want me to start, but I mean, as far as giving an update on where we are on our freeze, we are right where we should be right now. I'm showing on my latest form 991,000 where we're holding right now for a fund balance. Pending anything catastrophic. as I always say. And we have $613,000 left to spend for this year, which is actually ahead of where we should be.
Or where we could be.
In a good way, not a bad way.
Yeah. Yeah, I approved for this past week, not quite $31,000 worth of requisitions. It was actually 30,770 some odd change. People have been very, very good about being really, really tight with what they're spending right now to try to make sure that we're good to go.
Tim?
Brian, I lost you. So I'm seeing the general fund balance of the spending money that's left is 991. Did you say projected out of that, there's about 600,000 to the end of the year?
What we have, we're kind of coming at this from like 3 different angles.
Yep.
He has one, I have 2. I'm also keeping track of what funds are available for the rest of the fiscal year for us, but that's not encumbered.
So we've encumbered the $1 million. And so
Okay.
he's talking about the piece
We
that
have
is not
additional
encumbered.
$613,000 that we can spend right now and still have $1 million at the end of the year.
That is not encumbered against,
Over and above the encumbered fund?
Correct.
yes,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct.
So
Okay.
we're looking at the $1 million as spent and not there.
Yep.
So,
That's good.
yeah.
My only other question is it looks like a negative Tyler Tech expenses for 19,382.97 in red. What is that, Brian?
That's transition, that's fees, not fees, it's really our labor for the transition over to infant divisions.
Okay.
So,
That's part of that $38,000. Was it transition?
Part of that was transition, part of that was to pay for the software itself.
Right.
And some of it has gone more quickly than we thought, and some of it is taking a little bit more than we thought.
So how far along are we in that process? Are we approximately 50%?
Brian's eyes are glazing over.
well, I'm doing about 3 or 4 days a week, 7 hours a day, online with them and staff here, setting everything up, getting them trained. We're working on a payroll. We're going into payroll. We just did, purchase orders, purchasing. I've done the setup of the general fund. I've done stuff on weekends, at nights, just to kind of get it all caught up, plus doing what I'm normally doing. So it's very time consuming, but I think when it's done, you're actually going to like the reports. They come out really, really nice. We can really dig into things a lot easier, and it's going to be I think it's going to be more efficient moving through the system, and we're going to get to be more virtual.
It's got to be more efficient.
Yeah. We're going to be more virtual because we can attach things to things you can go in and look at, and instead of printing everything out and going through all this paper, now we can do it virtually, within the limitations.
Yeah.
So less work?
It will give us a
Little
better,
copier, yes.
yes. It will give us a better handle on things without as much digging.
But budgeting will be much, much easier in this new system because we assign a certain amount for each division, whether it be teachers in a certain building. I can say, all right, there's 30 FTEs of teachers. If somebody puts in the 31st teacher, it's going to send an alarm and not let them do it. It's going to send it to me and say, hey, someone's trying to put in an extra person. We got to figure out, is that in the budget? Is not in the budget? How is that going to work?
Nice.
So. Also, I have an update on the generator. If we can give them a word by June 1st, that'll work for them.
Okay.
Gives us some time. So I was going to start working me and Larry are going to start working on that.
Good.
Probably this week or next. And we'll have something together the next few weeks.
Good.
To get out there, so.
Okay. Also under reports, I saw in a folder we had something regarding the Learning Loss Committee report.
Yeah, so I put that in there. Tim kind of put it all together. We had our first meeting on the 19th. Some of the people present included Tim, myself, Ruth Ellen, Misty, Diana, 2 of the principals, and we had a general steering discussion. We're going to dive into more of the data and the issues themselves at the next meeting. So if there's any questions, feel free to come back with them.
I think with
Tim?
the intent of the committee, or at least Josh and I, from the board perspective, is to try to keep a running narrative with the board. So as we move along at a quick pace, there's no surprises in the end of the committee's recommendations back to the board. So obviously, if somebody sees red flags or issues, those can be discussed. The personnel in non-public, or if they're policy in public. And I look at it as having a completed package that's not a surprise to the board and easy to move forward to start that process going forward. The other thing I want to comment on is I've heard comments in the teachers community that have gotten back to me that they're looking at this process as a way to attack the teachers. And I just want to go on record that that's not what this is for. This process is, hopefully the paras, the teachers, will help us put some of these programs together. This is additional resources available for the kids, and that's this committee's goal, drive, and concern is what can we provide with the assistance of our teachers and our paras to our children. It's not disciplinary, it's not derogatory at all. So I just kind of wanted to put that rumor to rest.
Yep, and I will concur. I think it was a very congenial meeting, and as we sat down, pretty much what you had on your list was what I handed you was on our list. So our lists matched.
Yep.
Just trying to make sure that we can map out how best to meet some of these pieces, and along with that, start looking at what we're going to need to do in spending the ESSER monies to best meet those needs. There will likely be a few policy pieces that will need to be in place to do some of that. But it was a very congenial meeting.
Yep.
I noticed one of the information that was provided had to do with truancy and some of the requirements or at the state level. And I guess from reading this, I guess were the thoughts of taking some of this 1.7 million and applying to assistance with us to mitigate our own truancy?
That was one of the
Even got to that
items.
point.
One of the items discussed, yeah, and a lot of the truancy could be seen as a result of the pandemic, and the funds could certainly be applied in a way to mitigate that.
Because I think we would definitely need some assistance on top of what we have for staff now to bring it to a higher level than we're already obtaining now. Based upon, I think, what we're doing, I don't know how much more we could do with the staff we have.
Right, and I think we've gotten with a large majority of our students, the staffing and the capacity that we have has done a great deal. But we have that segment of our population that frankly needs more, and capacity to be in a car knocking on doors all day long, all week long. We just don't have it within our admin staff right now.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, two of the things we looked at, one is this was the initial steering committee that we actually asked for a lot of data. What are our numbers per building of our truant so that we can identify what the problem is at this point in time. The other recommendation that may come forward is a program that Rochester implemented where, looking at the process, we have a child that's out 10 half days and now they become truant. So the letter goes out, the process goes out, all the intervention that we have to do continues, and that truancy period grows, which isn't benefiting the child. One of the recommendations that the committee may bring back, but we haven't had a lot of discussion on it, is there's also an RSA that make parents responsible for the truancy. And as one of our first interventions, do we make parents accountable and bring them into court? And do we get court orders on suspended fines that are conditional upon getting your child to school? So it's a discussion to be had. No decisions will be made, but it's a tool that's been used in other communities that's been effective. So it may be a combination of both.
And your next meeting is this Thursday?
Friday.
Friday at 1.
Friday at 1.
And just letting you know that Mr. Roberts and I have another meeting at 2:45, so for a little bit bookended, but just so you know.
The normal day's scheduling. Okay, moving along, next we have an old business calendar update.
Yep. At this point, I did not put a calendar in here for you to approve tonight, but I wanted to give you an update on what I know so far. Governor Wentworth has met and did approve the change to the week of the 28th through the 4th. So it'd be the last day in February through the first part of March. They've moved it back a week. We had talked about following Governor Wentworth because of our voc connections. You had asked me to talk with the teachers union about the PD days on the calendar as well. So that's why I don't have one for you to approve at this point. There have been discussions by the union. They have not voted, and I don't have anything specific yet. I do know at this point they're looking at the 2 parent conference days falling under the professional development because they fall under domain 4 professional responsibilities in our evaluation system. And so they were saying it's not that we don't want additional professional development time, but that would be 2 more days that you're asking us to report for duty if those are added. So looking to see where we are, how we want to continue discussion, and that may end up being a negotiated point down the road.
I mean, one thing that just popped in my head, maybe the best we can do is have it voluntary. And those people that want to participate can, and then those that don't feel that they need to per contract, or feel that they're all set, they may not participate.
I mean, and certainly we can make the days available. I mean,
I'm fine with that. I just want to, make clear on the table that I don't expect the teachers to give us 2 additional days in the contract free. If you go into these professional development, in my mind, they need to be compensated for that.
So if we were to do that, then that would mean 2 more days compensation that we don't necessarily have budgeted in this year nor in next year.
We can find it. We can do 2 days of professional development under COVID, and some of the stuff that they're dealing with now, and we can pay for it under federal money. We'll find the money.
Yeah, I think that, those needs, the additional needs that we have, we can cover with those monies.
But that's up to the teachers. If the teachers have no interest in it, and they're satisfied that these meet their contract, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, but I do agree with Tim. I don't have any problem compensating them for that additional time.
Okay? And I would definitely agree that the time would need to be compensated.
Yeah,
so.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear with the union, that we weren't looking for a freebie, that their time is valuable and it's worth compensation.
Okay. And so in scheduling those days, then, do you want for this current year, for next year, both?
I kind of like feedback from them.
Okay.
If they say, hey, we're burnt out this year, we've had the worst year we've ever had, we can't do 2 more days, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
If they say we want to look at next year and maybe we can do the other 2 and how they want to work it in, that's up to you guys. Just bring us back a plan,
Okay. Sounds good, thank you.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Any other discussion on that point? Next, revisit April 1st target. Assuming this has to do with being back in school, either 100% or continue with our policy.
This was the target date that you had set. You said you were going to revisit it the first meeting in March, which would be this one.
Okay.
Our intent was to give parents 30 days notice if there was going to be any change. I don't see a need to change anything right now. One of my biggest concerns is our teachers haven't been vaccinated. I think before we pull everybody back in full in, I'd like to at least see that that's provided to our teachers. Hopefully it's soon. And I think, thinking about this, I think the one position or the one resource we need to hear from too is where are the teachers and paras at, and how do they feel about everybody coming back into the school with the space that we have? Are they for it, are they against it? And I'm okay for pushing the review out another month, and with the understanding that the governor tomorrow with his signature could say, everybody's back and our hands are tied.
At this point, the governor's statement regarding reopening schools really affected the 20 that have had no in-person schooling at all this year.
So you're referring to one of
The emergency order that was just before break.
just before break that stated that all schools need to be at least 2 days in person
By March 8th,
by March 8th.
correct. We have more than complied with that since September.
Now, does that order state for everybody? Or-
It states that in-person learning must be available for
be
students
available.
at least 2 days a week. We have made in-person learning available 5 days a week for any who
Right.
show up. It also says that there is no need to eliminate remote learning for those who choose it at this time. Henry Wilson is probably our tightest building. And for us to bring in the rest of the students now, we've got some classes that are, 3 feet is close for us right now. If we were to bring in everybody, we may have seriously compromised 3 feet in some areas. Not all spaces are like that, but we're certainly not maintaining 6 across district now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to agree with Tim's comments regarding the vaccination. The original projected dates were much
Much
sooner.
earlier, yes.
So some of our original goals were based upon what they had furnished us as far as vaccination being rolled out. And the either the start or the pace of the vaccinations are not at a pace, at a place where I would feel comfortable mandating people to come back in. Because even though right now there's the class that's getting vaccination is 65 and older, but the next age group that's has a concern is not yet available to.
Right.
And when is that slated to be? Say if you're in the 55 to 65 bracket, some existing health conditions, when is that even slated to be available?
Health conditions are now.
Health conditions are now, if there are two or more factors.
Okay.
Teachers are supposedly in the next round. We've been asked for census data for our staffing so that they can have an idea of how best to roll that out.
I was on a call with the commissioner today. He gave no more information than.
Does it have
Thank you for
expected
sending the data. Yeah, no.
Basically, get us the data, we'll figure it out. There was no guidance on
When
when
or
to
how.
expect it and how it's going to happen. They said, maybe we'll send a mobile unit to each school, and then people are like, well, can you do it on Fridays for the second shot? But you may get the Johnson & Johnson shot because
Right.
you don't have a choice of what you're going to get. You get the one shot of the two. I think
And
the single shot may be for teachers because you get it once, you're done. But
there's been some concern too, if they do a mobile unit and line up and vaccinate the entire staff at once,
we could all be out at once.
we may all be out at once if there are symptoms. Not everyone does have. I have a family member who's had her second shot. She had a sore arm and is a little tired. She's fine. I know others who've had, and she's a police officer, that's why she got hers. But, I have other acquaintances who've had reactions to both shots. So, and not seriously adverse ones, but ones that, led them to call out for a day. So I can't have the whole staff incapacitated at once. So,
So getting back to the discussion, Josh?
I think I've been consistent that I think the best learning takes place in a classroom, but I'm fine with extending the status quo till the end of the year. I think that's the best course of action, and then I think that beginning next year, we'll be able to be in school safely, so.
Stan, your thoughts?
I would agree. I think that we're doing fine right now. I think that everybody would be happy if we keep the remote option. I think if we push it back to May, and we only have a month, I think we should go right to the end of the year and just settle the argument right now so people aren't worried about it in a month.
So,
Charlie,
Go ahead.
I'm fine with the end of the year, if that's the direction the board wants to take. I just want to remind the board that under the emergency order, we kind of have that review process that, the goal is to get everybody back. So we're reviewing the criteria, we're saying, nope, we're not ready, nope, we're not ready. So we're following the emergency order by doing that. But I'm okay with saying, let's say we're going to remain remote for the rest of the year with the caveat that all it takes is a signature from the governor and our hands are tied. Because it's the governor through the emergency orders or the administrative rules that allows us to go remote.
okay.
Allows us to go fully remote, but doesn't say that we can't allow a remote option for circumstances. It doesn't mean that a student can't remote in because of X, Y, or Z. It does mean that we can't go fully remote just because we've chosen to do so.
But if he were to make a ruling, a determination that the pandemic is over in New Hampshire based upon a late-breaking vaccination sweep,
Right.
wouldn't that force us to be back in?
It doesn't mean that we couldn't offer remote in some cases where there is if I have a student, it doesn't have to be COVID related. If I have a student for whom remote is a better option because of a physical temporary disability, remote could still be an option beyond the pandemic. That's what I'm saying.
And I highly doubt the governor would do that until a vaccine has been offered to everyone that wants it.
So
I'll entertain a motion. Okay, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion to continue with the educational options that we have in place, both being in person and remote, to the end of the school year, barring any major changes by the governor or the federal government.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
I didn't get the number on that. Was it?
4-0.
4-0. Thank you. I wasn't looking up, sorry.
So next we have, on the old business, we have a policy, BDG, school attorney. In the folder, Ruth Ellen edited our current policy, and didn't know if the board had a chance to review it. It's pretty much put what the discussion was as like the 4 things after the current policy. I don't know if anybody had any thoughts or discussion.
just had one question, the way the policy's written. I'm going to try to bring it up here, if you bear with me. So we talk about if the superintendent consulting with the school attorney, kind of being the liaison with the attorney. Shouldn't there be a secondary method where if the chair needs to go to legal counsel for the board, the chair also has that discretionary right within the policy? And it alludes to that in the policy, but I don't see it.
I wouldn't read that as not being allowed by policy. I'm looking at it as what was in the policy prior. For instance, if an issue comes up with a special education case that I want to run past legal before we say yes or no to a determination, it doesn't mean it would need to necessarily come to the board. I would authorize Diana, yes, find out where we stand here. there are those day-to-day questions that sometimes come up. There might be a personnel issue that I need to ask a quick question, but it's not necessarily at board level yet. But certainly where you're looking at the bottom section, the questions to legal counsel, and certainly I think you could include, this is if it comes through me, and if it comes through the board chair, then, he's...
I think you need to have the same process with the chair, but I think the chair needs the authority by policy to be able to consult with legal counsel. And I'll give you an example. A parent makes a complaint against you as the superintendent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it would go through me, obviously, and it wouldn't.
Right. So I think we have to have that second line where the chair at that point is authorized.
And where would you see that being placed in this document? So if you look at it,
I can say, in the event of the board directed to contact the school attorney, the following will take place. And then I put in a 5, and this process can be conducted by the supervisor, the superintendent or a designee, or the chairman of the school board. Or list all 3.
Paragraph 2 would be a good place to put it as well. Decision to seek legal advice or assistance on behalf of the school district shall normally be made by the superintendent,
Yeah.
or specifically authorized by the superintendent or the chair of the school board.
Yep, same thing.
Yep.
Either way, I don't care where it goes.
Or chair board, or school board chair
Yep.
does the same piece.
Would that fall, would I fall under that as well? Because that's part of my responsibility.
You're her designee.
Contracts and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to wait 2 weeks to.
I mean, no, basically, she is authorized and designee depending on what the issue is. Tim's point is basically there may be some issues that,
You need to bypass me.
Hopefully not, but
Hopefully not,
I think it
yeah.
needs, for policy perspective, I think it needs to be in there.
right? Or it could be that you're out,
Right.
and it would best be suited by you, but you're out, and it may be more suited to the chair, depending on the instance, or it may be someone on
Or
your staff.
designate, either way. Yep.
Right, depending on what the issue is.
So will normally be made by the superintendent or persons specifically authorized by the superintendent. So shall normally be made by the superintendent, and
I
then,
would put it made by the school board chair or the superintendent, or, yeah.
and parentheses, or by person specifically authorized by the
Yeah.
superintendent. Okay.
Any other proposed changes?
And then I would, because we made that change in the subsequent paragraph, second sentence, for example, I would replace superintendent with district. That way it's a catch-all.
Saying the district may consult with the school attorney to interpret.
Right, so then that covers the chair as well, of the school board.
Okay.
Now, interestingly, do we have to have this reviewed by legal before we?
We do not, on
Legal policy.
that. I think these changes are fairly, yeah.
I mean, the bulk of the changes here are just trying to keep us on a
Streamline.
path where we get the best question asked for the board, the entire board.
So should we put the district or the district's representative may consult? Because that covers both you, and you don't want to say employee because but you represent the district as well.
You could say the district or the district's designee. No?
Well,
District, everybody in the district?
Yeah.
well, not everybody in the district can consult legal on our dime.
Sure. District's authorized representative.
Yes.
So does it make sense to waive a second reading? Are we kind of good with this to?
I'm okay with it. I think what I wanted to see added is there, and some clarifications have been made tonight.
So I'll make a motion to waive the second reading and approve the amended policy as edited.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Next,
And then I would just add along with that, since this talks about contacting the attorney, just reminding folks at large, 91A says that when we contact an attorney, it is a non-meeting,
yes.
just to make sure that that's clear for everyone, and that any decisions need to be made in a meeting, not a non-meeting, and not just by, outside of a meeting. So just to clarify that that the decisions are made by the board, and the non-meeting doesn't require posting.
Or minutes.
Or
This meeting
minutes,
would leave
right,
council.
because it's a non-meeting.
Right.
if you're
But
meeting
any
with an
decision of
attorney.
this board would be made in public or non-public.
Correct.
And records would be kept.
And records kept,
And subject
yes.
to 91A disclosure.
Right. And that would be 91A2.
All of them.
Well, it's a long, yes.
And a new business. I think we've got some old ones that didn't make this list, but if anyone's got any that they can remember.
We've got one. Shame on me, I didn't remember on the Farmington School District report that traditionally the school district doesn't provide, or the report doesn't provide a school board report. And I had emailed the chair and superintendent prior to, the report was going to press the next day. It didn't make sense to try to interrupt that process. And what I'd suggest to the board is, we're 9 days out now to town meeting. Do we want to generate a school board report, having it separate on top of the district reports to show what we've done and what the district's been facing since we sat here in March?
Ruth Ellen, your thoughts? Because I don't think any of that's captured in here. It's just informational.
Well, I mean, what we've been through since March is largely encapsulated, at least from each of the building
Right.
perspectives and how it's touched some of the other departments, but it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't give the board's perspective.
Well,
And so,
I think what's important for the taxpayer to know is, from March forward, what were the savings that were implemented by doing things a different way? And that dollar amount is somewhere pretty darn close to $1 million. Because of the revenue shortages, we saw problems with the budget, and we took the initiative to freeze $1 million. They saw a pretty significant projected tax impact on the ballot when they voted. We need to explain to them that that's going to be offset. For the people that don't follow social media, don't read, but they go to town meeting. And I think it's just another way of communicating with the taxpayers that are that put us here, or the taxpayers that are going to remove us from here, or it's communication with the people that we're serving.
Well, I certainly don't have a problem working on a draft report with Ruth Ellen for next meeting.
And typically,
and next meeting is the day before the vote. So is that, just saying. So, I mean, happy to work with you on it, but we might want to speed up our timeline just a
Well,
bit.
yeah.
and typically that's, typically on the town side, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's submitted by the chair. So I think my motion would be to authorize the chair, in conjunction with the superintendent, to draft a report available at town meeting.
So moved.
And do you want it at town meeting, or do you want it as an addendum
Is
at
there
the
a second?
polls?
At the polls is what,
Okay.
well,
Because
when do they
These
pick
are
them up,
out,
polls?
these had to be out publicly today.
But
so-
when do people pick them up, both?
They pick them up at the polls, they pick them up, they're available at the schools now.
But-
I will be posting it online, but primarily the large majority, and there's a whole stack down at Town Hall.
Why don't we add an insert into it?
And that's what I was looking at. If we do an insert there, and then I would post it publicly with the electronic copy of that as well. But the majority are picked up at the polls as people walk through.
Okay.
So we could do an insert in the boxes. I've got another 200 or so sitting in my office. We can,
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Josh did.
No, he made the motion.
No, I made the motion. Oh, to do what, the insert?
Yeah, I said so moved. I'll withdraw my motion so Tim can make the motion.
you said it and he moved it.
So is there a motion and a second?
My motion is to authorize the chair on behalf of the board to create a annual report of the school committee that can be inserted into the Farmington School District annual report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion? I guess it'll give me something to do in my spare time. So, if
Wanna meet
anybody
tomorrow,
has any
Charlie?
thoughts, they might want to forward them to me to be included.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing, all in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain. Okay, now get cracking on that. Don't have to leave early now. Any
You have to do that every meeting.
Any other?
Give him a writing assignment?
Okay, moving on to new business.
Just to give you what's coming next week, I will have the proposal from the junior class regarding their prom and their penny sale / yard sale that they're putting together. So we didn't have that quite in time for press, but we'll have it for you for next week, and it'll be on the 8th. So,
Okay,
I just got a quick
do you have an
question.
extra one?
go ahead.
The Easter funding guidelines, you mentioned at the meeting on Friday that they were out. Is there a published, how big is that?
It's not out yet.
What we
They gave us
received
some,
today, well, we have ESSER, and then we received some FEMA stuff today, too.
Yeah.
Both of which say, we're not done yet.
both of them are very extremely
Okay.
vague.
So the 1.7, the ESSER 2, the $1.7 million, they don't have any criteria on what we're going to have to set for milestones or meet for milestones
The other
yet?
thing they've told us is that we got to spend ESSER 1. They
Before
want to spend
two.
ESSER 1 before we start digging into ESSER 2.
Okay.
But we've accomplished that, right?
No.
Because
We took a lot of it out
because we
for
took
PSR.
a good chunk so that we could spend down what had to be done by December. So we're going to have to go back and re-pull that to rewrite it, which I'm planning to do tomorrow or Wednesday.
Ballpark, how much money is that?
We probably have,
We've probably got about 150 left.
yeah, I think 100, maybe even 170, probably.
So, and certainly we
And
can
they still don't
start.
give us the official number that we're getting. They gave
Right.
us the allocation. which-
Projected?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it won't change much between now. Even if it
No.
changes, a few
Yeah.
thousand.
On that note, one thing that has come up before is if we were going to do some additional after-school programs.
The after-school programs would likely need to come out of ESSER 2, not ESSER 1.
Right.
And so we need to get ESSER 1 allocated and done so that we can get ESSER 2 rolling. And part of what we're looking, the committee that Josh and Tim are on with us, we're looking at those parameters and what that looks like. The other piece that comes as part of that, while it's tangential, is we were contacted asking about space for after-school or summer programming through CAP as well. Is there any way that they could start looking at projecting out for summer camp or for a vacation camp for kids? We're not there yet, and at this point, we're just having initial conversations.
So
where
they
we
would be
can set that up.
looking to do some of their services here, or they'd be
Here.
looking us to partner with them?
Well, they're looking to do it here. They are looking to the possibility of, if they're able to run summer programming like they weren't able to do this past summer, but they have done in the past, and trips are available to them, which they weren't last summer and may not be this coming summer as well. That's still up in the air. Possibly partnering with our bus drivers to provide transportation for that. We're also looking at providing additional summer services for our kids. And so looking to see what that's going to look like, looking to see if we can do some seamless pieces if students are with us for extended learning, whether it's through an IEP or through, a targeted learning piece for our regular education students, to be able to say if they're with us in the morning to then maybe transition to a town or a CAP program where they could have full day, services that allow parents to work during the day during the summer and not have to come grab the kids at noontime. Because that has been a barrier that has been brought up, is why they may not come to a morning summer school, because then it interrupts where they are for the day. Again, looking to see what that's going to look like. Does it mean that we offer a full-day program? Do I have staffing for a full-day program? We're not there yet.
Well, I think there's going to be some resources that we may need to start looking at or asking the questions.
Yep.
Whether it's going to be people resources or whether it's going to be, I know we talked about maybe based upon what we have for bus trips, we may need to look at additional busing for
Right.
this. My thought is we might want to at least ask the question, because there might be a late breaking mad rush. But
Oh,
some of this
we already have our pricing on buses. We've already done that.
Okay.
So we know what we could do now,
Right.
but
So what's the confidence, say if this is something we're going to move forward with at a certain time, maybe it's
Right.
November of next year,
right.
are we confident that there's going to be adequate supply?
We know what's in the pipeline right now. What it's going to look like down the road may certainly change. We know that's what happened with Chromebooks.
So,
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is we're all going to be competing against us for the same resources.
Right.
Whether it's people, whether it's teachers, bearers, bus drivers, buses, I think we want to,
Well, even labor if we do anything HVAC related, try and find
Right.
labor to
Right.
do that work. When we're not in school.
Right.
That'll be the.
yeah, and that's another area
Right.
that we're going to want to be on the front wave.
Right.
I got a question on the Easter one, either one of you. Because our buses are requiring social distancing now in order to transport, under the Easter one funding, can we buy a bus?
No, we could have under SBSRF.
Okay.
ESSER 1, ESSER 2, I think we can.
SO2.
And so two, we definitely can, okay. So is the guidance that we're getting from DOE on ESSER 1 is, we'd like you to spend that first, or we must?
No, they'd like us to.
Okay.
They'd like us to. So it doesn't mean that we can't start the other?
They know there's different requirements for either, there's certain things you're going to have to put in 2 that you don't have in 1.
So on our bus pricing, is that something that went out to bid, or is that something we went state bid on, or?
We went to our normal,
We went to the vendor
get an
that we've
idea what
used
price was.
most frequently to get an idea of availability and pricing right now.
and there is,
And we do have the ability through ESSER 2 to waive that bid process if we have a preferred vendor.
Yeah.
That is in the procurement allowables. Certainly, we can go out to bid and do that too. But we wanted to get some immediate, what's the pipeline look like and what are the prices?
Yeah, okay. Anything else on the new business? Did they say when that documentation is going to be complete on the level 2 funding?
They
By
told us,
2023.
they told us 3 weeks ago it was coming this week, like that week.
Yeah.
And here we are 3 weeks later, we're no closer than we were. And they're supposed to be in the grant system online, and it hasn't shown up there.
Right.
Their emails have been sporadic. And
So-
the commissioner today did not give a lot of information on it.
Specifics.
Yeah.
They have 4 days left, right?
Well, no, it was when they said it was going to be this week, that was 3 weeks ago that week.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not,
They're
they
already
were
3 weeks
pointing at
late?
this week, they're already 3 weeks behind, yeah.
It's still this week.
So, do you want us to pursue anything on the buses at this point, once the ESSER funds show up?
The number that comes to my mind is 2,
And that's the number that we've kind of kicked around as well.
because of what, just the things that we would want to do. Some of the social distancing things we have. and
After-school programming,
programs.
yep.
I think that'd be the number that came into my head. And
Let's keep in mind, if you want 2, you really do have to do them quicker rather than later, only because come September, if the numbers go down, they might not require the social distancing. It may not fall under that, so we got to get it while
We got to do it while it's still needed.
I think we probably ought to move that up the level of asking the questions.
Okay. Do you
So
want
the
us to
current
look
vendor
at the,
is
Cressy is the one that we've gone with.
buying Still Internationals. No, who's the builders? Not Bluebird or
Thomas, I believe.
Thomas? Okay.
I think so.
We have it in here somewhere.
Yeah, you have the email.
So on ESA 1, Brian, how quick has a reimbursement been under the federal money from the state? Are we getting that fairly within 30 days, 60 days?
30 days. Yeah.
Okay.
Usually within, I mean, because it's school vacation week, I think it slowed down a little bit. Our last one was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
So I'll make a motion to authorize the superintendent to purchase 2 buses under the ESA funding.
Motion is a second.
Second.
I'd like to see the information before I'm ready to approve it, to be honest. But that's your motion.
are you looking, you mean?
As far as what we're buying, what the price is.
I can get you that.
He's got what we've got so far. Are you wanting us to put that to bid, or are you wanting us to waive process under procurement?
I'd like to see a complete recommendation on the purchase
All right.
of 2 buses.
I'll withdraw my motion, and then what we'd like to do is see a proposal from the superintendent at our next meeting on the buses. And once we see the pricing, we make it decide whether we want to waive the bid or go with the bus.
Feel it's reasonable to waive the bid requirement, you'd gonna have to justify that to us in writing, that's also gonna have to pass a justification under the funding.
Yep.
But I don't want to tie your
Yeah.
hands unnecessarily if there's good reasons to waive our standard bidding process.
Right.
And then my vision is, hopefully by then, the grants management system will be up, so you guys can,
It would be good to
Earmark
see it
that?
in there so that I can go in
Yeah.
and because
Yeah.
that is the one thing they have under ESSER 1, they've allowed us to purchase and then go back in and write.
Right.
ESSER 2, I want to see that in writing that I can do it before I do it, because I don't want to get out on a limb and then start the chainsaw after
And you may
myself,
have to-
so.
Yeah, you might have to ask the question,
Yeah.
it's not specific, and get it in writing, and it's gonna be covered
Yeah,
before we go ahead and authorize the purchase.
yeah.
Or
Or you could authorize the purchase as soon as it is.
Right, you had
I withdraw my motion and just, I think, a
I concur.
sense of the board that
Yeah.
I'd like to see that next week and get it moving.
Okay.
Anything else on the new business?
One last thing, the grade averages report, the quarter-to-quarter report we received last time, where are we at with that?
We were going to have that for you for Friday.
Friday.
Okay, all right.
Report cards just went out for Henry Wilson over break, so I will have those. The grades are now stored and I can pull those.
So what is your feeling of, we're better off or the same or?
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Today, I did not get to pull those reports to take a good look at them. In general, I think we've had a slight upswing, but I have not had a chance to do a detailed analysis, and I don't want to tell you something that I got to retract, so.
Okay. Anything else for the new business? Not hearing any, we'll move to our public participation at the end of the meeting. We still have one public person in public that's chomping at the bit.
Taking names and notes. I'll rearrange this. ESER 2. Did that, when they announced the 1.7, did that come with any type of a schedule of what's allowable?
Very broad strokes.
Very similar to ESER 1, with some, the guidance was geared more towards catching the kids up.
Loss of learning?
Loss of learning, credit recovery.
Which, by the way, I think is an extremely proactive thing for you guys to just, I mean, you could have just said, well, it is what it is, it's COVID, what do you want? But no, I totally appreciate that. My second question was, we're about 6 or 8 weeks out of the strategic design program.
I'm hoping to be able to bring drafts next week.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, just interested because, you do it and you...
Oh, yeah, no, I know. Yep.
Hey, thank you. Thank you all for having me here tonight.
John, I just want to make a quick comment. You hear the term loss of learning, and as it relates to COVID, which is kind of what we're looking at right now, but loss of learning is a yearly occurrence that occurs from June to September over the summer as well. So what we're looking to do with what we're up against COVID potentially will benefit us in further years with that transitional period when the kids leave in June and come back in September. So it's not something new because of COVID. It's something that we're realizing that we don't normally realize during the regular school year.
You can come up with a template probably with...
Mitigate the risk for the future.
Well, and in large part use templates that we already have in place from what we've done with extended school year and after-school programming as well. So.
Jen, do we have anybody that's online that would like to speak or got a question? Jen's got a mic.
There's no one in the chat that's asking to speak, so I think we're clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I put in the chat to ask anyone if they're interested in sharing anything. If anyone would like to share something at this time, they could unmute themselves. I do not see anything in the chat, however.
Okay, so I'd like to wish everyone a good night, and I'll make a motion to go into non-public session on 91A:3, 2 A, B, and C nominations and resignations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.